What's up everybody, Natalie here, and today I want to talk about Gary Yourofsky's return to vegan activism as the community seems somewhat divided over it. Some people are thrilled that he's back, and in their eyes he can do no wrong, and others think that he's a racist Zionist and shouldn't even be allowed at events. In this video, I'm hoping to bring some nuance to the discussion, highlight some of the vegan community's concerns, and respond to Gary's points. I'm not going to respond to anything he said 10 years ago because, we all change. I've changed in the last 10 years. I wasn't even vegan back then, and frankly, he's given me a lot to work with just over this last week. If you're not familiar with Gary Yourofsky, he is regarded as one of the most influential animal liberation activists of our time. He's liberated thousands of animals, spoken to hundreds of thousands of students about veganism, and his speech from Georgia Tech in 2010 has millions of views and turned countless people vegan. I first came across his speech shortly after going vegan, and back then I was burning with rage at the world, specifically at meat eaters, so watching Gary was cathartic. He spoke eloquently, unapologetically, he didn't sugarcoat anything, and he's wildly charismatic. He was active for 18 years and retired 10 years ago, mostly due to burnout, but now he's back, which has a lot of people wondering why now. There are some theories that he's been hired by the Israeli government to spread propaganda, but this is why Gary says he returned.
Right now, the universe is guiding me to come on back and do some things. I'm definitely going to be helping the sanctuaries, especially Sasha Farm back in Michigan. It's a place very near and dear to my heart.
It's funny, I actually visited Sasha Sanctuary over the weekend because it's the closest sanctuary to my parents' house in Michigan, and it was a lovely place, so I'm glad he's raising money for them. I'm going to donate any ad revenue I make from this video to Sasha, so please like and share so it can spread to more people. In this video, we're going to talk about intersectionality, politics, misanthropy, culty behavior, and of course, Israel-Palestine. Let's start with intersectionality.
I now firmly believe the #1 impediment to the progression of animal rights is human rights. Because once you bring humans into the mix, guess who doesn't get talked about anymore? And they rarely get talked about as it is. We have to stop focusing on humans and acting like humans are on the top pedestal, because as far as I'm concerned, we're not.
I think saying human rights is the #1 problem is completely insane for a couple of reasons. First of all, Gary hasn't even been in the movement for the last decade, so why is he so confident that he knows our biggest problem? As someone who's been heavily involved in the animal rights movement for the last 4 years, I basically started right after the world opened up after COVID. I definitely don't think that human rights is the biggest issue. I've spent time with animal rights groups all across the United States, from doing outreach with AV to open rescue and disruptions to DXE to pressure campaigns and ballot initiatives. And I've met hundreds of activists, and all of them are very focused on animal rights. Yes, sometimes we discuss other issues and advocate for them, but that doesn't mean we're ignoring animal rights or putting humans first. The issues I have seen with intersectionality are more that people disagree with each other on how we should handle certain human issues, and that can lead to infighting and conflict, which is a problem, but that's more of a problem with conflict management than intersectionality itself. As animal advocates, we're up against trillion-dollar industries with huge amounts of political power and influence, as well as the status quo on their side. We're constantly bombarded with the same excuses like crop deaths over and over. We face constant online backlash. We'll have issues with our friends and family because of differences in our values, and sometimes it feels like we're not even making progress. Saying that animal rights is failing because of intersectionality just isn't true, especially when you consider what we're up against. I think when someone makes a bold claim like this, they should back it up with evidence, which Gary certainly doesn't do, and he doesn't do for anything that I'm responding to in this video. There isn't much evidence about the biggest problem in the animal rights movement, but there is this study by Pax Fauna about why organizers quit, and I think it's a good starting point for this type of research, because if we can't retain organizers and activists, we're never going to make progress. So what does it say about intersectionality? First, we should mindfully recruit from underrepresented groups like minorities because most organizers in the US are white, and since it's more common to recruit people like you, then it can end up only being white people at events, and that makes others feel unwelcome. That's really all the study says about intersectionality, so now I'm going to offer some anecdotal evidence about why I think we should be intersectional as a movement. And I want to clarify what I mean because it seems like George and Gary are using a different definition of intersectionality, which we can see when George makes this bizarre statement here.
The animal rights movement is the only movement that intersectionality is applied to, because when it comes to Black Lives Matter, they hate a motherfucker who shouts all lives matter or white lives matter. They say, no. This is just, we understand that all lives matter, but this is about black people. But then what happens in the animal rights movement? We'd like to keep this focused on the animals. How dare you? Don't you know that all lives matter? There's people dying in Palestine. So they're the all lives matter people of the animal rights movement. They're the exact people they hate, except worse, because they are extremely inconsistent. It's consistency that I care about.
All lives matter is not intersectionality, it's derailment. Intersectionality means understanding that oppressive systems overlap and none of us are truly free until we all are. When people say Black Lives Matter, they're not saying only Black Lives Matter, they're saying that Black lives are treated as if they matter less. We can see evidence of this in the data on the US prison system, how cops are more likely to kill black people, plenty of other data to support this. So when people say Black Lives Matter, they're highlighting systemic racism in the United States, saying that it's a problem and we need to confront it. All Lives Matter responds by saying that everyone is already treated equally and mocking the BLM movement. And it's basically used as a thought-terminating cliche, which is where they're trying to end the discussion, not further it, like when people say, let's just agree to disagree. That's certainly not what I mean by intersectionality. When I say it, I mean supporting and working with other social justice movements. I don't think animal activists have an obligation to work with other social justice movements, but I think it helps our activism because we can learn from them. It also increases our social circle and normalizes being vegan in different groups. George and Gary say animal rights is the only movement that's expected to be intersectional, but that's just not true from my experience. I've only really been involved with climate and urbanist movements, as well as some recent pro-immigration stuff too, and the whole time all of these groups are constantly trying to collaborate and build coalitions with other movements. As far as I'm aware, George and Gary haven't been involved with other movements, so I think that they just made this up. With the war on immigrants going on in the US right now, I think it's especially important for us to support them, not only because it's the right thing to do, but because it benefits us. When the government has the power to deport whoever they want, they'll use it to target animal activists. We already know the FBI has targeted us for years, and this gives them an easy way to get rid of us. The fear of deportation also hurts our community. I lead a social media working group for Pro-Animal Future in Colorado, and one of our activists quit because he was worried that posting anything online would get him deported, and it's a valid fear. We saw what's going on with Mahmoud Kamil, who's facing deportation for pro-Palestine activism. What would stop them from deporting someone who's fighting for animal rights? Nothing. That's why we need to stand up to fight against this now. The other reason we should build bridges with immigrants is because they're the biggest demographic working in slaughterhouses. This was a big issue with our campaign to ban slaughterhouses in Denver. The entire election became about how white activists were taking jobs from immigrants, and it really sucked. If we'd had more support from the Hispanic community, and we did have some support, just not enough public support, and if we'd had the support of unions as well, then maybe we could have won that election and won real change for animals. So those are the main reasons I think intersectionality is important. It's morally right, it's strategic, and it makes us stronger. Now let's talk about politics.
Lobbying,
I agree with that.
I think is garbage. I don't think you can pass a law that people don't understand why the law has been passed. Plus, you're not going to get anyone to enforce it anyway. So I see a lot of groups going, "Oh, Gary, we should put laws on the books." Now the laws come at the end when everybody understands it, everybody gets it.
Saying that we shouldn't do any lobbying is crazy to me, especially because the animal agriculture industry spends so much time lobbying, and that's part of why the animal rights movement is struggling right now. Because the meat industry has spent so much time lobbying, they get billions of dollars in subsidies every year, and they just got even more with Trump's new big beautiful bill, adding $58 billion to the $38 billion they were already receiving every year. We know that price has an outsized impact on consumer behavior, so if we want to change consumer behavior, then we need to change the subsidies. The meat industry has also been successful in banning lab-grown meat in 7 states, and that's going to hurt animals too. As animal activists, we have to fight back. A lot of people wonder why the gun laws in the US are so lax, and it's not because that's what a majority of people want. Most voters want stricter gun control. It's because of the NRA, or the National Rifle Association, which is the most powerful lobby in the country. Politicians are afraid to go against them because if they do, then they won't get re-elected. One of our goals at Pro Animal Future is to create a powerful voter bloc or lobbying group that will pressure representatives to pass pro-animal legislation and hold them accountable if they don't. Speaking of Pro Animal Future, I don't usually ask for donations in the middle of a video, but we have a really important match that's expiring at the end of July. If we don't raise enough money, then we'll leave $50,000 on the table. So please, if you've ever wanted to donate, now is the time to do it. You can turn $25 into $50, link in description. Gary also says that the public doesn't understand why laws are being passed, and that can be true with legislation, but it's definitely not true with Pro Animal Future's other main strategy, which is ballot initiatives. With ballot initiatives, the voters themselves vote on the law and decide if it gets passed. With our Denver campaign to ban fur and slaughterhouses, even though they didn't pass, they became the hottest and most expensive issues on the local ballot. Everyone in the city was talking about animal rights. We got a ton of press coverage, and the meat industry spent $2 million against our campaigns, which hurts their bottom line. Gary says that laws can't even be enforced, and that's true of every law. Not every thief or murderer gets caught, but we can write the laws in a certain way where they can be enforced by citizens, which increases the impact it'll have for animals. I think it's ridiculous how Gary brings up progressive successes like gay marriage equality or recreational weed and doesn't acknowledge that those came from lobbying and ballot initiatives. Most social change happens in the political sphere, so telling animal activists not to get involved in politics not only hurts the movement, but it hurts the animals. Another way Gary is harming the movement is by being misanthropic.
I was lecturing in rural Ohio, and I actually said to the newspaper guy, I would not want anything bad to happen to Greg, the pig farmer that I talked to today. We had a discussion. So it started off where I didn't want anyone to be harmed. But after all those years, I'm like, you know what? Humans are a scourge. We suck. We don't understand compassion and decency.
Look, I'm not going to pretend that I never feel this way. When you see the horrible violence that's happening to animals, when people constantly mock you just for being vegan, and when you see how slow progress is, it's really easy to start hating everyone. But the problem with misanthropy is that it's not helpful and it hurts your ability to keep fighting, and we have data that shows this. A 2020 paper in Conservation Biology found that activists who cultivate hope, the opposite of misanthropy, are more resilient and less likely to burn out. Another study found that hope plays a central role in motivating collective action. It enhances perceptions of efficacy and emotional engagement. When people believe that change is possible and that they can be part of it, they're more likely to stay active and engaged. And that's the real danger of misanthropy. It destroys your belief in other people's potential, and without that, you stop organizing, you stop protesting, and you burn out, which is exactly what Gary says happened to him. He left the movement because he hated people, so I don't understand why he's back and promoting the worldview that made him leave in the first place. You don't have to ignore the suffering that people create in the world, but you do have to believe that they can do better. That's what makes social change possible. Not despair, not misanthropy, hope. Now I want to talk about some of the cultish behavior, like Gary's arrogance, how people hero worship him, and why I think it's a problem.
Tell you what, I had a ton of success in rural America. I really did. And I converted hunters. I did, a lot of them.
Do you know the majority of the people that hate me? Guess who fucking opened up their mind and made them vegan? Right here. I was told that all the people in Frankfurt that were trying to get me kicked out of the fundraiser, they're all Gary vegans.
First of all, I don't think we should use language like converting because it implies religion, and veganism is not a religion. Religion is based on faith and belief, whereas veganism is based on scientific evidence. The evidence that animals feel pain and suffer, that we don't need to eat them to survive and thrive, and that animal farming is causing tons of issues in the world like antibiotic resistance, pandemics, and climate change. Non-vegans love to say that veganism is a cult so they can justify dismissing us, so let's not make it easier for them. I think it's concerning how Gary refers to people as Gary vegans. Personally, I don't really like when people tell me that they went vegan because of me, because I know that it's not true. They went vegan because of the animals. Maybe I helped educate them on animal farming, but I think that's a really important distinction to make. Because when you blur that line, when you start centering yourself instead of the animals, you open the door to arrogance and ego-driven leadership, and movements built on ego are fragile.
When I needed to decompress, I drove up to Manchester, Michigan, and I walked around and I hugged and I kissed Big Red, and I hugged and I kissed Bima and all those pigs, and Gary Tofu, who was a pig there for a long time. I did make them name him after me. I was there the day somebody brought this baby pig. I'm like, there's a baby pig in that van, and I ran up to it. I'm like, you have to call him Gary Tofu. And he was everybody's favorite for a long time.
Like, if you really don't care about adoration, then why insist that a pig be named after you? And then say that he was everyone's favorite pig, like the name somehow made him more lovable? We can see evidence of hero worship in the comments on that live stream. No one is correcting the inaccurate things Gary said or pushing back at all. It's just endless praise. I think that's dangerous because when we idolize individuals, we lose the ability to think critically and evaluate if what they're saying is actually true. It also makes a lot of people afraid to call him out. I was afraid to even make this video because I know people are gonna say that I'm just doing this for attention, or he's done so much more than me for the animals and I'll never be as good of an advocate as him. And you know, maybe that's true, but just because he's done a lot for animals in the past doesn't mean that he's immune to criticism now. Now let's get into everyone's favorite topic, Israel-Palestine. A lot of people are calling Gary a Zionist, and this is what he publicly said about it.
People falsely label you as a Zionist, but actually the comment you made was that the land that there's this dispute going over, it doesn't belong to either of them. And you said the Americas didn't belong to whites or the natives. Who do you say the land belongs to, Gary?
The land belongs to the animals. We stole it from them. We're all thieves. And then we fight over, wait, is it the Palestinians? Is it the Israelis? Is it the Americans, the Native Americans? It belongs to the animal kingdom. But I also don't see a reason why we all can't live peacefully amongst each other, and that includes the animals.
So that's what he said publicly, but let's take a look at this private email that someone posted on Reddit. An activist emailed Gary about something he said during an AV workshop. Gary said gay people shouldn't speak up for Palestine because Palestinians don't like them. The activist said vilifying the victim is a classic tactic of oppressive propaganda, and that's something we see all the time with animal farmers, like when they say that it's okay to steal calves from dairy cows because the cows are bad mothers anyway. The activist calls Gary out for saying hateful things while promoting kindness to animals, and Gary's response is pretty different from what he said on George's stream. My brother, you are 100% wrong in this issue. Radical Muslims are 100% anti-gay, anti-trans, anti-black, anti-woman. They are the worst abusers of human rights. You got it all wrong. Then he says it shouldn't matter because he's not a human rights activist in any way, and it's fine to disagree with people on some things, but we should unite for the animals and not bring up human rights. The activist responds, and I think this is so ironic, that it was Gary who brought up Palestine in an animal rights workshop only to badmouth them. Then he asks what Gary would have said during the Jewish Holocaust and cites evidence from the UN about whether Israel is committing genocide. And he emphasizes that he's not hating Gary as a person, he's just asking him to reconsider punching down on people. Next, Gary responds that he's pro-trans and all this other stuff, and Israel is 100% right. Then he accuses the activist of being anti-Semitic. So why is Gary saying publicly that he thinks the land should be for animals and privately that he thinks Israel is 100% right? Gary plays the victim when people call him out, even though he's the one who brought it up in the first place. And then he's acting shocked and complains about cancel culture when people respectfully question his beliefs. That's not cancellation, that's just trying to get clarity. So those are my general thoughts on Gary's comeback. I could say more, like some of the weird health claims he made without evidence, but I don't really feel like going there right now. But I'm curious, what do you think about it? Do you think Gary is this amazing hero for animals? Do you think he is a racist Zionist? Let me know below. If you want to support my work, donate to Pro Animal Future. Otherwise, I will see you next time.